I'm Will Parker. I lead our UK technology recruitment business at RP International, and I'm going to host this afternoon's session. So this really is very much the first in a series of IT leadership webinars that we'll be running over the coming months. And Dan, who's on the panel today, I'm sure will give us more detail over the coming hour. But I guess we've really seen a huge shift in people considering a move, be that to develop a portfolio, to expand on the portfolio of work that they currently offer across a number of clients, and indeed the services within that. So I think naturally we've heard a number of different statements. So should I consider a fractional portfolio? Am I right? Is it the right time for me? And equally from clients, would a fractional resource be right to fix this current problem that I have? Would a fractional resource be right to help with the current challenges that we're facing as a business at this time? And so what we wanted to do is get together a really good panel who can give a variety of perspectives on these questions, hopefully some practical steps that they've taken and we can learn and observe from their journeys. But if I could just take this opportunity to thank Georgina, Dave, John for joining us today, it really is appreciated. I know it's the middle of the day, but thank you for joining us and for leading this session. Very quickly, some admin. So hopefully, most people I'm sure have been on a Zoom webinar before, but there's a chat function bottom center of the screen for Q&A. So we do want this to be as interactive as possible. So please share thoughts, comments, observations, and questions in that chat facility. We'll be monitoring it as we go along. Comments and questions pertinent to what we're discussing will involve as appropriate throughout the conversation, hopefully with sort of 10-15 minutes towards the back end of the session for Q&A. So we may well just bank a few of them for that. For those of you who've just joined, as I say, I know a few people have got 1 o'clock appointments to get to Zoom's teams, and we'll try and get 2 or 3 minute gaps. We can go and refill coffee and tea mugs as well. As I say, I'm going to be hosting this afternoon. I'm sure that the panel are familiar to most of us, but maybe we could just do a quick round robin and intros, and then I'll kick off with a couple of quick questions to get us going. Georgina, maybe we'll hand over to you.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. My name's Georgina Owens. I am a technology leader that's worked across multiple different sectors and had a number of roles, both fractional and non-fractional. And I hope today to share some of those experiences with you and give you a bit of insight into what it's like to work in a more of an interim kind of fractional environment.
Thank you. John?
Yeah, hi, I'm John Finch. I've been an enterprise CIO and CTO in a number of large organizations globally. And I am now operating in a fractional way. I'm an advisor to a large private equity fund, Advent International, and then I help a number of their portfolio companies, so fractional within fractional. I'm a senior advisor to a large cloud and regulatory consultancy called Reply, and I help them in client engagements and provide oversight for them. And I'm also a non-executive director of a small cloud cost optimization business called Thebes Cloud Management.
Thanks, John. And Dave?
Yeah, thanks, Will. So Dave Jones, been a FTSE 200 CIO for most of my career up until June 2018 when I embarked on my portfolio career. So my company, Digital Ways of Working, was 3 years old last Friday. So here to share my story, I guess, on that transformation from a permanent CIO into the portfolio world and what it means for me. My portfolio consists of a couple of fractional IT director roles for SMEs, a few CIO advisory services for larger organizations, a couple of tech advisory roles, and also a non-executive director for a company called Republic of Things.
Thank you. Dan?
Hi all, most of you will know me. I am not a CIO, but I recruit senior technology leaders across the UK. I've known the panel for many years. Joined RP, I think I'm a couple of months in now, and I want to be giving a perspective from the client side. So what clients are looking for when they are looking to consider taking somebody fractional, hopefully adding a bit of a different perspective there.
Thanks, Dan. Maybe if we look at working this through chronologically and looking at events that maybe led up to wanting to explore a fractional career, was it a definitive career plan that you'd mapped out? Was it just manifested itself at a certain point in time, perhaps with the relationship you had with an existing client or network? And then equally, I guess, reflecting, do you think that you were ready and made that step organically? It manifested itself, or definitively today's the day I'm moving out of my X gig and now I'm going portfolio? Georgina, I don't know if you could maybe lead us out.
I can. So for me, it's been more of a kind of work-life balance choice. And, the approach that I've taken is really what is right at the moment. So I've been in large leadership roles, and then from there kind of moved into something that's more smaller, interim, consultancy based. Just, I think sometimes when you're in those very large teams, running large teams with the sorts of responsibilities, it's quite nice to step back and then take more of a single contributor role where you can have a completely different perspective on the way in which you're operating. So mine's been more of a life balance thing. I'm in an interim CIO role for an insurance company at the moment, which is a 3-month role, and it's really nice to go in and deliver something that's very, very meaningful to the business, and kind of leave a bit of a legacy with them as well.
I know that Dan's hopefully going to share some opinions and some thoughts that we hear from customers, but I think that return to work and that structure of work is starting to look very different. So it's interesting to hear that work-life balance is taking a view. And John, I don't know if you come at it from a different perspective.
I come at it from a similar perspective, but slightly different. And it's great to hear Georgina's overview there. And so I had been through 2 very large private equity transactions in businesses that I were involved with, sold to PE and then sold on to another. And I'd been running very, very large organizations globally, on and off planes for a long time. And when the second transaction happened and I was deciding what to do, as I explained to Dan at the time, actually, I had a what's the meaning of life kind of moment. So I decided that I was going to take a work-life balance approach. I didn't really know what that meant at the time. And because of my work in private equity transactions, I was afforded the opportunity to take a role as an advisor for Advent. And that was promised as about 3 days a week, and I was quite taken with that, because the idea was I'd never work on a Monday and never work on a Friday. And as we go through this conversation, I can see Dave and Georgina smiling a little bit. Of course, it hasn't really worked out like that, but it was done for work-life balance, having been in huge organisations for a period of time.
That's now taken up 5 days a week and probably
it's probably taken more than 5 days a week now, but we'll get into that, I think.
And Dave, was it a particularly defined Friday closed work laptop, Monday open digital wow, or was it a journey?
It was a little bit more of a journey, to be honest. I was FTSE 200 CIO for an organisation called Cape Industrial Services. They were acquired by a French group called Altrad, which I took the CIO role on at Altrad, but it changed significantly in terms of what the role expectation was. And ultimately, it wasn't a role that I knew I'd be happy in or enjoy long term. So I made a decision to exit. I had probably 9 months to think about whether it was the right thing or not to do for me. So it wasn't a quick decision. I did some groundwork, some homework to see if I could maybe make a portfolio career work. Decided to go for it. I decided to make that leap. A lot of people thought I were a little bit crazy by leaving a big CIO role, and albeit on good terms, and basically the risk of setting up a portfolio career from scratch when I could have easily hung around for a couple more years in that CIO role and carried on taking the salary. But for me, a bit of a lifestyle choice. I didn't want to spend a couple of years more in a role that I wasn't going to be happy in, so made quite a big decision. I could have, as I say, hung on and maybe just stayed there till I found a different CIO role, but I did make the conscious decision to move into portfolio and fractional and see if I could make it work, which it has, and I've not looked back. So as I say, I'm 3 years in, but yeah, a big call at the time, I think.
I think, so, as you rightly say, as we go through the conversation, I think the emotional well-being and balancing out what's important, what's going on in your life may or may not play quite a considerable factor in some of these decisions. And Dan, I guess, what do you think is important for people to consider when leaving permanent jobs and interim assignments? You know, we've probably got a more holistic view, speak to lots of IT leaders around the considerations, but are there any key things that you think are important to consider before exploring or making that definitive move?
Yeah, I think there's a few things, Will. I think I've got 6 points, I suppose, which would be 6-point plan if you're going to make a move to fractional, and please do the panel if you've got an opinion, you can jump in. First one is kind of how strong is your network and reputation. I think that is a big thing in, you know, the fractional space is a really competitive market. As we've got 3 fractional really brilliant panelists here today. I know there's more fractional people on the attendee list that I could see.
Oh, I can't hear Dan.
Now we've lost him.
Oh, you're back.
Sorry, I lose. How far did I get? I got, how big is your network? How big is your reputation?
There we go.
Fine. I'll move on to number 2. How are you going to position yourself in the market? So are you going to be sector led? So is it something that you're going to be just working with manufacturing firms? Are you just going to be working with digital firms? What is the size and scope of that remit, and what do you want to be doing? Are you okay with not owning the team, but owning the deliverables? So are you okay with not getting any of the glory and making it all your fault when it all goes wrong? So I think you've got to balance that, and you've got to be okay with that. You've got to be okay with having those deliverables and being really accountable for what you're trying to deliver. What services are you going to offer? So this is kind of linked to the number 2, which is, are you CIO? Are you enterprise IT director? Are you CTO? Are you board advisory services? Are you everything? Where are you going to sit, and what questions do you think that certain clients are going to be looking for? 5th one is, are you wanting to run your own business? And I know we've spoken about this, and this is definitely going to come up a little bit later, but as I'm sure we'll come on to, it's more than just the work. It's not just doing the 3-6 months or for the actual work. It's the business development, it's the relationship building, it's the long-term aspects of everything that comes with that job. And the last one that I wanted to add on is location, because no one talks about it at the moment because of COVID. And I've always believed, I've been in recruitment 10 years, especially in the fractional market and the interim market, you have to go where the jobs are, where the roles are. You have to be able to move, you have to be able to be located somewhere. Now, has COVID changed that at the moment? Yes. Do I believe that to be changing once Boris has opened everything up? I think it will. I think there will be an element of some businesses wanting fractional and portfolio people in there so that they can see them and see the whites of their eyes. So I'd say those would be I'm sure there's many more, but those would be my points for to consider before you start thinking about going.
Maybe I'll pick up on, yeah, I was going to say there were lots of nods and smiles. Great.
It just came to mind as you were talking, Dan, and I think one of the other things is, you know, if you're thinking about doing this, are you comfortable with being left out of the decision making? You know, because you go in there, you're doing a role, but then what will happen is that a decision is going to be made, and because you're interim and you're not part of the team, that, you know, the rest of them go off and make that decision, and you're kind of left out, and that can feel a little bit, okay, I put all the effort in, I did all the work, and now I can't contribute to the decision making. And you just have to accept that that's part of the role. You know, you've given your experience and insight, and therefore that's the end of it. But, you know, I think in the beginning that can feel a little bit weird.
And Jonathan, you were sort of nodding, is that Is there something? Is that familiar to you? Do you
Yeah, 100%. I think Georgina makes a great point, and you know, Dan was talking about not owning the team and not getting any of the glory. You have to be happy and content, or learn to be happy and content. I know Dave talks a lot about being on a journey, and I've really had to get, you know, used to this kind of, you're there providing advice and guidance, and almost be like a wise old guy or girl, you know, sat in the corner, and they come to you and say, should I do A or B? And you dispense some thoughts and ask some questions. And, you know, they go away and execute, and, you know, you're a winner when they deliver something really well and your name isn't mentioned, or they're doing a presentation at the main board and your name isn't mentioned. And you have to be completely ego and attention free, and just be content that you're helping other people to be, you know, really successful and effective, I think.
And Dave, could I ask your perspective on that? Obviously, coming out of Cape, having been, you know, so entrenched in that business and so, you know, understanding the nuances, having been there for so long, to then, firstly, do you share the same opinion? I sort of see nodding and smiling, perhaps you do. How's that transition worked for you, moving out of the complete ownership to the advisory stage?
I think I agree with what Georgina and John have just said to a point. What I've actually found is it's definitely, it's almost like a NED role. The advisory stuff is like a NED role. So I'm working with SMEs, and I'm working actually at their exec team level. And I don't actually feel like I'm being left out of decisions. I think I'm being at a level where I'm contributing to where they're going and what their leadership teams are thinking in terms of their IT and digital strategies. So maybe that's a slightly different view. I think there's some maybe a conversation about what portfolio, fractional and interim mean, because they are different. Obviously, interim, you're in there for 3 to 6, 12 months, whatever it might be, and typically you've got one client and you're working for that client for that time. Whereas fractional portfolio, I've got 5 or 6 clients at one time, and my time's a lot more split up between them. So I think that's quite an important distinguishment as well. But yeah, I think overall, I guess the key thing is you're there as, certainly my experience in the last 3 years is I'm more of an advisor than a doer. So if I see, taking John's point, if I see that the company's going in the right direction and they're listening to what I'm saying, I don't particularly want to be the one that gets all the credit for that. I'm quite content with the fact that I'm leading them and directing them in the path that I think they should be taking.
And can I take that back a step in terms of how the engagement's positioned up front? So when you first start talking to a client, I would imagine that's almost critical in terms of understanding the red and grey lines in terms of influence, and equally, is it an advisory coaching role alongside an incumbent, or is it there is no number one and it's an SME perhaps with 2 or 3 IT managers? Do you think that plays a weight in terms of, or do you think that plays a factor in terms of the weight that they put on your shoulders for delivery and ownership?
Yeah, I mean, typically when I engage with an SME, it's through referral. There'll be some kind of MD level person that's had a conversation with somebody on my network, and they've got a particular business challenge or business issue around IT or business systems or digital transformation, whatever it might be, and they'll refer me in to go in to look at that organisation. I'll do some kind of a review on where the problem lies. Typically, I'll write a report and some recommendations, and more often than not, I'll be asked to stay on in some format to help them deliver those recommendations and strategy, or whatever it might be. More often than not, there is a small IT team in place. There's quite often good IT managers in place who've got a decent IT strategy, but maybe not that kind of next level way of thinking about digital and technology and where it can really impact the business, where it can increase customer value or shareholder value, and that next level, really, that kind of higher level type of thinking than the guy who's looking at, or the guy or the girl who's looking after the day-to-day IT stuff might have.
And coming back to how I guess how each of you have developed your businesses, is there a particular tool? I'm going to suggest that networks are going to almost be fundamental to this. But are there any other avenues, and as Dan said, you know, personal reputation, personal brand, that have been particularly useful at developing that portfolio of work, possibly outside of IT, moving into an NED role, or looking at an enterprise portfolio of services that obviously all three of you offer?
I don't mind going first for that one as well. I think if you don't have a strong IT network and a strong brand and purpose of what you can deliver, then you're probably not going to have a very good start to your portfolio career. I think it's absolutely critical that you've got those things in place and you've got contacts who can bring you work. As you've said, it's a very, very competitive market. If you're trying to win business against a lot of the good people out there and you don't have the connections and the network and the brand, it's going to be very difficult.
I think one thing I'd add to that is kind of take a chance on your networks. So there is the technology network, but expand it and go further. So I mean, I'm very active in women-led networks, for example, but also I've taken a bit of a turn recently where I'm working in startups. So I'm a mentor for the Founders Institute, which is a startup accelerator. And that's not just technology startups, that's all kinds of startups, so I'm making lots and lots of new connections that lead into really interesting discussions. So don't restrict yourself necessarily just to one area, but look wider.
And John, how have you gone about developing that network? Is it something that you've actively worked at, or is it more sort of organically grown through your career?
I guess it's fair to say that earlier in my career I just kind of ignored it as a thing, if you sort of and then as over time one gets to connect with a number of people, etc. And then since I've been thinking about a fractional career, if you like, really work that, reach out to people, talk to people. I've found that if it's people who you've known relatively well professionally and you connect to them, they're always willing to talk anyway. People are often, willing to help and advise. And I think by putting yourself out there a bit, reaching out to your connections, helping to keep, relationships going on, in a professional sense, really pays you back, because there is no, real other way to get work here. You have to get, a referral or do some really good work for someone and people learn about it, or that person goes somewhere else, or yourself and Dan hear about something and somebody needs somebody for a few hours a week or something, and you pick up the phone to one of us. So there's a bit of that as well. So you need a broad set of connections that you develop over time, and invest in it.
I know that Dave just put in the chat to connect, but there's a couple that I've seen be really powerful. The PwC Scale program, startup incubator hub that heavily invest in tech across the UK, that love to connect. Not just IT leaders, but leaders in all different fields to put the right people in the right time at for the right causes, if you like. And then there's obviously the Accenture Accelerate program. So for those on the call, those two will be definitely programs that it's worth googling and registering and going along. They run, there's certainly PwC and Leeds run 2 sessions a year. The Accenture Accelerate program now runs a number across the UK throughout the year again. And it's, I think, Georgina, to your point, yes, the majority of companies going through those programs are in startup high growth mode, probably sub 2025, but equally in Leeds, the data shed came through there. The Pan Intelligence came through there. So there are some real benefits of being involved, as you say. Yes, obviously the bread and butter being IT in terms of your background, but going and looking at other opportunities where you can add value and possibly being outside your comfort zone initially. I know that I was the first time I went to the PwC Scale event. I think, in fact, Dave, I bumped into you at it. And it was, hello, I'm Will. Nice to meet you. Yeah, so definitely putting yourself out there. And obviously being sensitive to current projects and NDAs, but are there opinions of the panel on why clients are now considering bringing in fractional more and more? I think, Dan, it's something that we hear as that, would a fractional be a right resource for us today versus, I guess, the traditional FTE interim assignment for 6 months? Do we have an opinion as to why?
Yeah, I'll come in on that because I think obviously the I mean, Dave chatted about this, the SME market is something that is quite a heavy use of fractional talent because you have the flexibility. So we don't want somebody for 5 days a week for the rest of the year. You know, do we really need that? Are we able to go down to the hourly basis sometimes? You know, we've got this really specific problem that we need some challenge that we need some help with. So can we go down to hours or days? There's also kind of two flips of the coin. So are you going in to help an existing CIO IT director who has a complex problem? So let's say it's a CRM or a people management change or something like that. So you're going in to give they don't need the rest of the experience. They just need somebody who's been through it, felt the pain, and knows how to kind of get them out of it. There's also that element of mentorship there as well that I think is really, really quite nice from a fractional perspective that I'm sure the panel will have some opinions on. And then there's the element of actually, yes, but we need somebody for probably a little bit longer. So I do think there's probably two elements of why, you know, who would hire that type of talent. Will, I'm not sure if the panel have more views on that.
John, when you've seen fractional resource come into business, again, I guess picking up where Dan left off, is that something that you'd agree with?
So I'll draw on two examples, but one is I'm clearly doing a lot of work in the private equity space, right?
Yeah.
And you know, the cycle is do due diligence, invest, you know, a material sum of money, and then work on a piece of transformation with a view to leaving the business healthier to exit. And so within the private equity space, there's very, very large demand for people who come in for a period of time for, you know, specific, you know, sets of activity. We need to get to cloud. We need to digitally transform. We've got to take out costs. We've got a talent issue, you know, whatever those challenges are. And private equity, one, are becoming more and more active because they're sat on huge amounts of capital and are buying a lot of businesses. And in every case, they need to drop people in to help in a variety of places.
Yeah.
So it's going to become a lot more common. You know, it's going to continue to become a big area. And so people who have either operated, even if they've not been in private equity, but they've done any mergers and acquisitions work, or have worked as an interim, or have split a business in half or something, they are going to be in high demand, and it really is a real opportunity for people. Something else I'm doing is I'm advising a business who are an education kind of ranking portals business, and they're specifically thinking about how does big data and the cloud and digital transform our business, and I'm just giving a bit of advice on that. So I think a lot of these things have been triggered either by, you know, kind of the convergence of big data, cloud, analytics, insight, and businesses changing, and also private equity are just so active at the moment.
I was just going to pick up on the mentoring,
Yeah.
you know, that Dan mentioned, and I'm advising a couple of boards and organizations, and that mentoring is a big part of, you know, helping senior technical leaders with the challenges that they've got, giving them a safe place to go and kind of just talk about some of their challenges and almost bounce around ideas, you know, and not be judged by necessarily their peers or other people that are within the team. And I think that's a really critical role that is, you know, in today's current pressure world that we're all in. I think it's great to be able to provide that to organizations, and of course the organization benefits from it as well.
And Dave, I'm sure, given the roles that you occupy, I'm sure that's something that you see a fair amount.
Yeah, I think, yeah, part of the CIO advisory services for the larger clients that I work with, coaching, mentoring is part of what the service involves for the CIO or IT director. I've always had good mentors in my time who I can talk to and bounce things off and get a different perspective on things. I think it's really important to have somebody external to be able to talk to and share your problems with and share your ideas and challenges with.
And whilst there's no substitute for, you know, the practical experience and I guess being that natural coach, how important do you think qualifications are, and going and doing an NLP or a coach or an NED qualification to potentially rubber stamp in terms of the portfolio that you're offering, but also take that professional accreditation. Forgive me, I don't know if it's something that the panel have done per se, but I'd love your opinions on that if it's important, do you think?
Well, I haven't taken any of those qualifications, mentoring or NED courses. It's not held me back, but I'm sure there's benefits from having them. I'm sure, like everything, you're going to learn more from going through a formal certification, and I'm sure there would be some clients that would appreciate you having that on your CV.
It's interesting. I haven't seen anyone asking for those certifications, but I wonder, you know, as the market develops and there's more and more demand for this type of role, whether people might start asking for a certification of some kind. Don't know. Interesting question, though.
Yeah, I think
and I don't have a qualification in that either. And so it's a really interesting question. So I've not been asked about it ever. To the 2 points made, it's a really interesting question. And I spend about 25 to 30% of the time in any of the assignments, doing, a mentoring type of role and coaching role. So it is an interesting question.
I was just thinking about, the makeup of the roles that you've described, how much time, John, 30% is spent developing, coaching, mentoring, how important it was, but it's interesting that it hasn't come up. I guess it's the person, isn't it, drawing upon that real world experience in role and building a relationship with the peer, with the person or the leadership team. Dave, I know that we've spoken about this, but one of the things that comes up when people are considering this, and I'm not sure if it's overlooked, but certainly something to be aware of, is you're suddenly chief BDer, head of marketing, office manager, your own first line support person, management accountant if it's not outsourced. How do you go about managing that time? I guess firstly, were you cognizant of it before you embarked on setting up? Is it something that are there lessons to be learned for people who are listening in terms of some of the stuff that you've got right or wrong? And then are there any trade secrets, but is there a certain amount of time that you dedicate to your business versus clients?
I guess you've got to treat it as a startup. At the end of the day, that's what it is. But that's what it was for me. I was leaving a CIO role and starting my own business. I'd never run a startup before, so it was absolutely a steep learning curve for me. And yeah, you do become overnight. You are a business development person. You're a sales and marketing person. You're responsible for delivery. You're responsible for finance. So you have to learn a hell of a lot pretty quickly if you're doing it yourself. And yeah, different people will, I guess, start from a different place depending on what their background is and where the skills are and how they apply those. Maybe the biggest one for me was the business development side. I do have a great network. I'd like to think I've got a pretty strong brand, so I wasn't kind of sure in terms of getting prospects and opportunities through the door, but getting them over the line and doing the BD side with the clients and the prospects was a bit of a learning curve, and I definitely lost a few opportunities in certainly the first 6 to 12 months where I had to learn how to best go about the BD aspect of things. Yeah. But yeah, the basics are you are a startup. You're going to be doing all those things yourself probably. You got to learn about your finance and how to set your GLs up and send your invoices out and do all the admin side. You don't have a PA anymore, at least not at the start, to organise you. And obviously that becomes more of an issue the more successful you become, because you can be dealing with, in my case, I've probably got 6 different email addresses and combined calendars to try and manage, and it's a little bit all over the place. So it's definitely a change in style, let's put it like that.
Well, I'm pretty sure yesterday when we set this up, I think all 3 people said, which email address have you sent it to? So I've got 6 phones, 14 laptops, 3. It was, yeah, but you're absolutely right. John, you were sort of nodding. Again, is it that startup into developing a business attitude that you took?
I mean, it was just a huge shock for me because I was, enterprise CIO and CTO with very big organizations. And I had an office of the CIO and a PA and all of that stuff. And then all of a sudden it's me. And to Dave's point, there's invoicing and admin and I had to book a train and book a flight and just stuff. And I had to create my own PowerPoint and just stuff. And they really want all of your big experience and all of the things you've learned, if you see what I mean. But you tend to leave behind a lot of those other kind of basic skills. And it was a huge shock for me at first. And yeah, attempting to balance that and trying to get it right, and improving my PowerPoint and Excel skills again when I had to do some stuff as well as advisory work. So it kind of, I was surprised with how much extra time it took up at first.
Yeah.
To get that right. And then there was the whole, on the business development point, I started off just doing the Advent thing, and then I do the reply thing, and then I do some ad hoc, via my network. And people say, how much you're going to charge? And that for me, I found really quite difficult, given I had a base rate, that was set by private equity, and when to walk away. If someone says, well, I only want to pay half of that, do you still take it, etc. So, I've had to learn a lot about that as well. I found that really tough at first. And
Georgina, I know she came off mute.
Yeah, I think the juggling aspect, the having to do everything, because there isn't someone that you can just call upon to do it for you, and sometimes that can be quite demotivating. The less glamorous side of the role. But I think the other thing that is tough, and both Dave and John have talked about business development, but you can spend all day talking to new contacts, and it all sounds really great, and it's all very exciting, and there's all these things that are going to happen on the back of it, and then you never hear anything again. And it's like, and keeping yourself motivated and keeping yourself going, I think is a real tough one. Just think, oh God, I've got to speak to another new 5 people today, and that's a tough one.
And in fact, it's a question that's come up more and more over the last couple of months. John, it's possibly picking up where you were finishing. How do you say no without losing a relationship? And it's incredibly tough. Certainly, Dan and I talk about this all the time, in terms of balancing workload and making sure that we're absolutely the right people to help with that assignment, role, challenge that the client's facing, but equally sometimes we're not, but maintaining that relationship. And I guess I don't necessarily draw on the half money, and so it's a no, whether that's dictated by the PE company that you're working for at the time, or if it's an individual decision. But are there any tips, or are there any experiences that the panel that you guys would draw on to say no, but maintain a potential future with that client relationship or contact?
So I will always try and say no, but here's somebody else. So I will always turn it into a referral and try and help regardless, because in that way I maintain the relationship, and still provide some kind of service back to the person. And even if you can't make a referral, at least it's showing really good intent, and like I say, it maintains that relationship.
I think I'd just second what Georgina said just there. I think if you can use associates to deliver a request, it's actually about ethics. Some people might take a role even if it's not ideal for them, especially in the interim fractional world. If you need the work, you might take something, but it might not be quite right. I think actually having the ethics to say no because it's not right for me and I can't deliver the best outcome for you is actually a really good way to keep a strong relationship, other than potentially take it just because you're in a place where you need that work.
And that I think
that's quite. Sorry, well, I think we see the similarities with recruitment, right? Because I think that, is it more powerful to say no than to say yes sometimes, and living by your values and making sure that to your point, John, if it's half the money, that you make sure that it's the right thing, that you cost that amount of, that piece of work is that amount of money. There's no, you don't bend to that. So I think that possibly it is more powerful sometimes, but there is a fine balance, isn't there, between saying no in a nice way, but also maintaining the relationship at the same time. So both, I'd say it's a challenging one.
And I was just going to say, I wonder if after, Georgie, picking up on that particularly tough week or day where you've spoken to 10, 15, 20 new people, there's been an awful lot of tractor wheels spinning, but maybe the farm hasn't been ploughed, and then it's, oh, go on. And actually, is it better to go, well, no, my business services this customer, or this is the portfolio of services I offer, and so I've got to stick to my guns. But I would only ask, is that the position you find yourself in when you've got to be really sort of almost strict with yourself to go, no, I believe that this is the direction of my business, and so therefore, as tough as this is, I can't help you, but I would speak to so and so, or I'd recommend this person, or maybe speak to this company.
I think it's lucky that generally you don't have to say yes, no immediately. So you have enough time to, to have the conversation, to qualify, and before you make the decision. So you're right. If you've had a particularly tough week and things are looking a bit gloomy, and someone suddenly drops something in your lap, then the temptation is to say yes. But I think it's better to always do the qualification and assess it against your own requirement before you make a decision.
And John, if I could ask you, the expectation of a client, how is that differing for a fractional or portfolio individual that they're looking to bring in maybe a day a week or a few hours a week versus that permanent or that interim? And does that have a factor in terms of almost eliminating that conversation, perhaps through the process where you don't get to the yes no stage?
Yes, I mean, my experience has been that in this fractional or even quick interim type of world, you need to be, delivering support, help, advice, outcomes really, really, really quickly. I remember talking to somebody, you're going to a new enterprise and you've got your first 100-day plan, and it takes you 20 days to get to the 100-day plan. Kind of in this kind of role, you've probably got the first 100 minutes, if you see what I mean. You've got to build relationships ultra quick and be, they're expecting feedback, help, support at pace and influence and advice.
Yes.
And, you're not spending a lot of time investigating on the ground, if you see what I mean. So there's quite a contrast there.
And I'm mindful that we've sort of got 10 minutes. I've just opened up the Q&A box. So firstly, thank you to the audience for filling it. I'm just going to pick up on a couple. One of them's around splitting down time. So how effective can a fractional role be on a short-term part-time basis if not fully integrated to the business? The existing CIO lives and breathes everyday issues and experience, and must be difficult to grasp this knowledge quickly. How have you found that, particularly when engaging on an hourly basis with a client or a single day a week basis, perhaps?
I think the same as John says, you've got to make a quick impact. As soon as you're not adding value, if you're not tied into a 12-month contract with them, then they're going to stop using your services. So as long as you're adding value, and I know there's a question maybe coming about how you invoice, but as far as I'm concerned, the client will know pretty quick whether you're adding value or not, and I'll know pretty quickly as well. And if it's not adding value for both sides, then it's going to come to an end pretty quickly, no matter what the scope of the assignment is.
I think I'd add to that, and John said it, it's all about outcomes and impact. And if you find yourself working for somebody that is tracking the hours, you're in the wrong place. But it really, juggling is tough. I mean, one day going from, one thing to another thing to another thing to another thing, you've got to switch your mind really, really quickly. And you've got to be there and be present immediately. You don't have time to reflect and alter your way of thinking. So you do have to be capable of doing that. And if you're not comfortable with ambiguity and change and fast pace, then this is not going to be the role for you.
And I've found, the reality of this is a lot of people are faced with fairly, universal issues here. Have they got the right talent? Are they aligning their technical strategy to the business strategy? Do they know about whether to be on cloud? All of those types of things are quite universal issues. And I was, anyone who knows me knows, it was big financial services, big data infrastructure. I'm advising a couple of global logistics companies at the moment. And you'd think it's completely different, but you have to, the point's been made, quickly get in there, you work to understand their challenges and then start to offer help and advice.
And Dave, could I ask you, from your experience, how do you, picking up where Georgina and John left off, how do you Monday work with client A, Tuesday work with client B, Wednesday work with client C? Are there tricks of the trade, but are there particular ways and mechanisms that you've dealt with that so that you don't have the, you don't need the 10-day onboarding run up that perhaps you don't get with this type of engagement?
Well, I'm actually working with client ABC probably all in the same day a lot of days. I'm not booking full days out, especially in COVID times when everybody's working from home. It's a lot more flexible to suit the client. It's just organisation, I guess, and focus, and being able to switch between mindset as to what you're doing for which client at what time is the, I guess, one of the key skills. And that's, again, it's a learning curve to be able to do that and prepare yourself for what's the next day. As you know, you guys, I do a lot of walking, so I do a bit of thinking about what's coming the day after, and use a bit of walking time to get into that headspace as to what's coming up.
I was going to say, I think, Georgina, the word that you use, being present, it's critical, and probably, not to make this too philosophical, but learning around what makes you present and how you best prepare yourself mentally to be in the right place at the right time in the right headspace. So that's really interesting. Thanks for the insight on why Howson would consider a fractional CIO career move, and appreciate some of the drivers, work-life balance, etc. Can I ask the ugly question about money? And I'm not going to pick on anyone, so feel free to jump in. How does the portfolio CIO earnings compare to the perm CIO earnings you could demand in the market, all things considered? Key aspect is to understand the level of parallelism to the engagements, recurring revenue streams that you have.
I don't mind going first again. I think it's back to the question as to why you want to do it. And part of the why is about your work-life balance. How much do you want to be working? Some people want to be working, as John said, ideally Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday would be brilliant at the start of the call. One of the big things you need to consider is, I guess, your financial security and where you are and what you need to be able to earn in this environment. It's sources for course that you're going to be as successful as you are at the end of the day, and you can maybe get to a position where if you wanted to, you could work 7 days a week. A lot of people don't do it for that reason. It is for work-life balances. You could, in my opinion, you can quite easily exceed a permanent CIO salary if you want to put the work and the hours in and you're successful at it. But again, it's why are you doing it? How much do you want to actually work in this lifestyle? You could be doing it just to get by with one client and a day or two a week.
I think you also have to be very good at planning. What, as Dave said, kind of what you want, but plan for outages. Because there will be gaps in the market. You can't necessarily keep it rolling, especially when you first start out. And so, don't get all excited and spend the big check when you get it through the first time. If you've just landed something great and then you've got nothing for another 3 months, you need to be able to make sure that you're planning properly.
Yeah, I'd agree with all of that. And I think you should, when you think, it's important to know how much you need to live however you want to live and, be able to still pay into a pension or pay your mortgage or whatever. And then you work out hourly rate. And to Georgina's point, understand that, they're going to, you're not getting paid holidays now, etc., etc. But the short answer to the question is, if you park long-term incentive stock plans and things like healthcare, I can earn very close to what I was earning as an enterprise CIO if I decide to do 5 days a week. And everyone's saying work-life balance. It's important to understand your parameters on that and understand that you're doing it for that reason. I spend a lot of time helping even more junior teams, and I get a real kick out of helping them. So I see that as some of the earnings almost.
To go sort of back to the beginning of the conversation as to the why and the setup and the considerations of all the different, financial earnings is obviously one, but what else are you looking to get out of this? And Dan and I were talking the other day around, is this a really good mechanism for increasing D&I at this level? So Georgina, to pick up on one of your points, I think one of the challenges around parents returning to work, particularly after a certain amount of time, is the day looks different depending on when children are at school. And so is it all about the financial reward? Is it satisfying a work-life balance alongside some coaching which gives you a personal reward? Is it looking at 3 or 4 different industries to keep you interested and engaged? Probably that bit of time at the beginning to really map out, yes, obviously financial earnings, money, mortgage, etc. But equally, what else am I looking to draw down from this? Is a really interesting point.
It is an interesting point. You have to, I would say that you can balance your work life, but sometimes it will all collide and come together. So you just can't always get it exactly the way you want it, and so you sort of have to be prepared for that as well. I don't know, Dave and John, how you feel about that, but I'm sure you've had those days as well where it's just like, oh God, it's all got to be put in. How the hell am I going to get it all done today?
Not.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, if I work more hours than I'm billing, right? Because you've got to juggle these things, and you're there to help the client, and you're there to add value to them, and it's about the outcome. So you're right, Georgina. There are days when you think, oh heck, I'm just not going to complete it. So yeah.
Dave, come off mute. Is there?
Yeah, just to kind of concur. It's about planning and not taking on too much, and understanding when deadlines are and what your commitments are to deliver your outcomes. Yeah,
absolutely. I think firstly, I'm hoping that we've got through all of the questions in the chat. I get to the audience. I get thank you for coming. If there are further thoughts, observations, obviously Dan and I are going to do a blog and a bit of a roundup afterwards, so we'll share the recording. But if there are any more questions or thoughts upon reflecting on this, please do share them with us, and we can come back to you as appropriate. As I say, it started off, but can I thank Dave, John, Georgina, and Dan for being on the panel. It's been a really great hour. Hopefully, it's given some real insight into some of the benefits, but also considerations of moving into this type of work, and what great days can look like, and where you position, but equally the tough days, I guess, where we've finished, where you have done that 12-15 hour day and all the wheels are spinning. So really thank you very much for sharing